Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for bearing with us. We really appreciate your patience. We're just giving it a few minutes for everyone to join us who is a voting delegate, also making sure that they register over on the voting website. If you have any challenges with that as you're trying to log in, we know that there's still a number of people out there who haven't yet logged into the voting website. So if you're one of those folks and you're having any challenges, please put a chat in the message to NAIA host, and we will connect with you and make sure that you have the information that you need. With that in mind, we'll give some instructions here as we go about exactly how to participate throughout the meeting, but we just wanted to make sure everyone is getting set up in terms of getting registered both on the Zoom and in the voting website as we kick it off here. So with that, Arvid, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Chesney, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first ever virtual NAIA business meeting. As Chesney said, my name is Arvid Johnson, and it's my privilege to serve as the chair of the Council of Presidents. These are certainly unusual times, to say the least, but we're pleased that you've made time to join us today to take part in the NAIA's governance process. We're voting on many important proposals today, and your participation indicates your commitment to making a positive difference for your institution and our association as a whole, and I thank you for that. These last few months have been difficult for everyone involved in college athletics. The NAIA has had to make some very difficult decisions, ones which we know don't please everyone or can't please every person or institution. But I'm proud of how well we've handled this challenge, and I truly believe that each and every person in this meeting strives to put the needs of our student athletes first. That is why the NAIA is successful and why I'm proud to be a part of this organization. I hope you're proud as well. It's now my pleasure to turn over the business meeting to Chesney Salih, our Vice President of Membership Value and Governance, to take us through the proposed legislation. Chesney.
Okay, thank you, Arvid. And Thomas Howell, the chair of our Constitution and Bylaws Committee, will be helping walk us through this, and we'll describe some of the procedural parliamentary parts of this in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure that we are all set up and that everybody has an understanding of how this process is going to work today. So for all of our attendees, we will obviously be using this Zoom platform to essentially have conversation surrounding our business proposals. So for any of you who maybe joined our caucus last week or some of these various other meetings that have been occurring over the last handful of days, this will look familiar to you. There are two ways for you to participate if you would like to ask a question or comment for or against a particular proposal. So you can either raise your hand by going down to the participants section at the bottom of your slide here and select raise hand. You can also type a comment or a question in the chat function. Please direct those to NAIA host to make sure that you are catching our attention and we queue those up so that we are responding to them with each proposal as we go. So that's for all of our participants here today with us in the Zoom. For any of you who may be voting delegates, so each institution or conference has one voting delegate who is entitled to provide a vote, cast a vote on behalf of your institution or conference. If you are that individual, you'll know who you are, and you should be logged in now over on the voting website. As we go through the voting website, we will take each proposal individually. And Tony, I think you're going to get us queued up with some slides here to give us a couple of test runs, just to make sure we're all familiar with it. A few things to note as Tony's getting us ready. So we'll vote on each proposal as we go. Once we have gone through the conversation related to each proposal, and we've taken any comments or questions that have come through from the audience, then we'll have an opportunity to vote, and Thomas will indicate that. To vote, you will click on either 1, 2, or 3. 1 is for a vote of for or in favor of the proposal. 2 is for a vote of against the proposal. And 3 is for a vote of abstain. You will see these buttons at the bottom of your screen. So if on the voting website, you're that voting delegate and you're looking on your voting website and you don't see your buttons, you might adjust your browser to ensure that you can see all the way to the bottom of the screen. When you click that button, it should turn blue. And that's confirmation back to you that you have selected one of those buttons. If you would like to change your vote, if you change your mind, you can certainly do that. Just click a different button. The button that you have selected and what is being registered with the system will be the one that is blue. So that's the confirmation for you. There will also be a clock that comes up on screen when you have 15 seconds remaining. So you can vote prior to that clock being on screen. And again, if you're ever questioning if your vote is getting registered, just make sure it's blue. That's how you have that confirmation. And the system will collect any votes that come in before the clock runs out or takes all the way down to 0. So I think that is basically all the instructions that you need, but we will go through a couple of tests here just to make sure everybody feels comfortable with how this is going to work. Okay, so this is just test slide number 1. You can pick any option you would like. Pick option 1, 2, or 3. If you are a voting delegate, you are going to look over at your second browser that you have up that has the voting website on that browser. That is where you're going to look for those 1, 2, and 3 buttons down at the bottom. So please select any option. "15 seconds remaining to cast your vote. Okay, so most of you are in favor of this test. We appreciate that. We'll do this one more time just to make sure everyone feels comfortable. That's about the numbers that we would expect to be seeing here. So it looks like it must be working for everyone, I think, here, but we'll try this one more time just to be sure everybody feels comfortable. So again, please select option 1, 2, or 3 on the voting website. "15 seconds remaining. So there was a question that came up in the chat about how to select. If you are the voting delegate for your institution, then you would have a second website pulled up that would be the voting software. And on that software is where you would see the buttons along the bottom of the screen. Not everyone in our Zoom here today is a voting delegate. So some of you folks are just joining along with us in the Zoom to hear the conversation about the proposals or to ask questions or speak up yourself about the proposals, but you may not be casting a vote on behalf of your institution. So if you are not a voting delegate, you don't need to worry about this voting process that we're going through here today. Okay. All right, so with that, Thomas, I'm going to turn it over to you to give us some instructions on how we're going to work through our various proposals here today now that we have completed our tests.
Okay, thank you, Chesney. Good afternoon for everybody. I'd like to remind you that we go proposal by proposal on these kind of things. Today, there are no constitutional proposals. So all we have is bylaw proposals. And those bylaw proposals, we have 9 of them, require only a majority vote. So there will be no constitutional proposals, no need for a 2/3 vote. We do need, for parliamentary rules, a motion and a second to allow each piece of legislation to be formally proposed and heard. And that way, for that purpose, Elfie and Bryce, 2 members of our Constitution and Bylaws Committee, have agreed to take on this task. And this is what we affectionately refer to as the Bryce and Elfie show. So you'll hear that before we get to any big proposal. Once the proposal has been formally moved and seconded, the floor is open for discussion. I'll open it up for any questions or comments anyone in attendance would like to give, and you do not have to be a voting delegate in order to speak to a proposal. Chesney has already described how to indicate your intention to speak by either raising your hand or entering a question or comment in the chat. I would ask anyone who would like to speak to a proposal clearly, please identify yourself by your name and institution before you speak for the first time. So for a proposal based on our number of voting delegates, 111 votes will be needed in order for the proposal to pass. We have 220 voters registered, so 111 is the magic number in order for our proposal to pass. So without further ado, we will move to the proposals. And for that purpose, I will call on Bryce and Elfie to introduce proposal number 1.
Thank you, Thomas. Bryce Bernard, Corbin University. I make a motion that we approve Bylaws Amendment 20B01.
Elfie Farshman, Weber International University. I second the motion.
All right, thank you. Proposal number 1 deals with softball scheduling, as you'll recall, as well as at the moment medical hardship limits, although a subsequent proposal may change that part of it. Basically, it simply means that instead of having 28 dates, there will be 56 opportunities for competition, see, 56 contests. So instead of 28 dates, 56 contests for softball. I think it's that simple. Don't worry about the medical hardship proposals at the part of it at this point, because that's almost certainly going to be replaced. Open the floor for any questions or comments. Okay, hearing none, seeing none, and the NAI staff will call my attention to it because my ability to recognize is a little bit uncertain.
Nothing coming through on our end at this point, Thomas.
Pardon?
Nothing coming through on our end.
Okay. The proposal is, let us vote for proposal number 1. For, against, or abstain. Please vote. You'll see the clock go off and you have 15 seconds to vote.
Okay, so we have a vote of 142 in favor, 66 opposed, and 15 abstentions.
Proposal number 1 passes. We move at this point to the second proposal.
Thomas, I think we may have lost your sound momentarily.
Okay.
You're back. You're back.
I'm not,
I think we just missed you as you were just starting to introduce proposal B02.
okay, do you have my sound back now?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Proposal number 2. Proposal number 2 deals with women's volleyball. Basically, it adds an additional 3 scrimmage dates to be played after the end of the fall term during weekends or non-scheduled class dates. This is essentially the same as the soccer situation for women's soccer is concerned. It splits men's and women's volleyball, but the basic regulations for volleyball remain the same for men and women. But this, any questions or comments on this proposal?
No questions or comments from our end.
Questions or comments? All right, we're ready to vote. Please vote on bylaws proposal number 2.
Chesney, it needs to be moved and seconded.
Oh, I forgot about that. Sorry. I beg your pardon.
We'll hustle it in.
Like the Elfie show. Please, Bryce, please, and Elfie, please do your thing.
Bryce Bernard, Corbin University. I recommend the approval of Bylaw Amendment 20-B-02.
Elfie Farshman, Weber International University. I second the motion.
I'm used to looking down for the podium and seeing them standing there at microphones, so sorry about that. We're all adapting to virtual meeting. All right, now it's time to vote on bylaws proposal number 2. Please do.
$15 seconds remaining to vote.
191 in favor, 28 opposed. The proposal passes. As you've probably noticed, the votes from various groups appear on the screen, so we know what particular groups, athletic directors, presidents, and so forth, they're on the straw polls that were taken in the caucus. So those appear on the screen before bylaws proposals actually are voted upon. We're ready to move to bylaws proposal number 3, and for this I call on Bryce and Elsie.
Bryce Bernard, Corbin University. Make a motion to approve Bylaws Amendment 20B03.
Elfie Farshman, Weber International University. I second the motion.
All right, this concerns wrestling. It basically permits students, coaches, and one teammate to practice for 4 weeks if we have individuals who've qualified to compete in United States Senior Nationals, National or Olympic Teams trials, or to represent United States wrestling in competition or international equivalents. So basically, this is a proposal to allow someone who is eligible for those meetings to practice and accordingly, there's an exception to the play limits in the 24-week season. In order to practice, you can't wrestle yourself. So each time one teammate is allowed to participate in the practice, one teammate for each session. It can be various teammates. If there are 5 sessions or whatever else, you have 5 different people, so long as that is a teammate. That is to say, somebody on the same team, not just simply an individual from outside. So it basically adds this specialized proposal for wrestling. Questions or comments?
Nothing from our end at this point, Thomas.
All right. Hearing no objection, please vote on bylaws proposal number 3. And bylaws proposal number 3, 126 for, 6 against, passes. We move to bylaws proposal number 4. This is a somewhat more complicated proposal, and certainly one that would change considerably some of our regulations. It basically comes from the Competitive Experience Committee. And the idea here is that in order to be charged a season of competition, a student must participate in no greater than 20% of the frequency of play limits for that sport. Now, essentially, since this renders our medical hardship proposals for NAI people already within the NAI system irrelevant, basically they would no longer need a hardship because they would already have met the stipulations. So there are no further hardships beyond this. Someone coming in from a non-NAI school still would have to meet the medical hardship stipulations of NAI. So these will remain in the rules, but for people who are within the NAI system, they will not be necessary, and you wouldn't need to apply for a hardship, assuming the individual did not participate in more than 20% of the contest. Basically, effectively, it replaces the unattached exception as well, with an exception permitting national or Olympic team competition without charging the student a season of competition. Now, that does not give, by the way, a total unattached individuals will not be able to participate in everything without being charged a season, because basically the participation in elite competition can result in charging of a season if you go beyond certain limits. So Effectively, it removes, for the most part, our medical hardship and our unattached provisions. Questions or comments?
Thomas, I think I should jump in and get it on.
Yes. I can't, somebody, I need to have my wife here reminding me. Bryce and Elfie, please.
Bryce Bernard, Corbin University. Make a motion to approve Bylaws Amendment 20B04.
Elfie Farshman, Weber International University. I second the motion.
Now questions, comments?
None coming through on our end yet, Thomas, but I know that this is a bit of a complicated one that has generated a lot of conversation over the last number of days. So I do want to make sure we give it a minute in case anybody does have questions or comments at this point.
Still nothing, Chesney?
I believe Terry Harris has his hand raised. Terry will get you unmuted here if you're not already.
Yes, is this the proposal that there was some discussion about a friendly amendment or a slight change in wording? Is this the one that concerned?
Well, so we do have a friendly amendment to a different proposal, none to
To a
this
different one. Okay, then
There-
strike what I just said.
Since you raised that, Terry, I will mention there was some conversation specific to this proposal inquiring about if there could or should be a friendly amendment related specifically to baseballs and baseball players, pitchers specifically, in the sense of how a 20% type of an application would work for pitchers who don't necessarily participate in every contest. And so in the days since our general caucus on Friday, the baseball coaches leadership have gotten together and had a meeting, as did the competitive experience committee. And I'll paraphrase, but essentially their conversation related to the idea that there are already some other regulations that we have in the NAIA that they think will serve to act as sort of boundaries to keep it in play first, or to keep things in check for a pitcher who may not get charged a season of competition, even if they have 9 or 10 or 11 baseball starts or participation in that many games. But between things like the 10 semester rule and otherwise, that there are some other regulations that will ensure that those students are making essentially progress towards degree and eventually terminating their eligibility. The baseball coaches do recognize that that might be something that in the future we find a better way to do that in a way that works more specifically for pitchers. But at this point in time, they were comfortable moving forward with the current proposal as it is and did not prefer any of the other alternatives that have been raised. So that could be what you're referring to as well, Terry. There was some conversation about that, but that it does not appear before us as a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I think that is the case. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question, can you hear me? It's Jason Horn, Xavier. Sorry.
I hear
don't
Jason
have-
Horn.
Just to be clear, so what this essentially is it's like the hardship rule, a medical hardship rule. If you play in few enough competitions during the regular season, you will not use a season of competition, but you will use semesters of attendance.
That's correct, Jason. Yes. And you raised one point that I also will address, Jason, which is some people have asked, why do the numbers per sport look different than what we're used to in the medical hardship limits? And it's purely a matter of how they're phrased. So in the medical hardship limits that you may be used to looking at, it would note in football, for example, that the limit was 2. And the way that was stated said you can play an up to 2 contests before you are charged. The way this proposal in front of us reads, it says you are charged once you begin to play in this many contests. So in football, it'd say once you play in your 3rd contest, you are charged. So in effect, the result is the same, but it does look different in terms of a matter of phrasing. So here every contest would look like it is increased beyond what we're used to seeing in the medical hardship limits, but in actuality, it's the same limit.
Got it.
Share a comment from one of our members to remind those that are voting that if you do not compete in the numbers that are listed in front of you, but you do compete in postseason, that is an automatic charge.
So another question coming through as well, asking how softball will be referenced now that in a prior proposal, B01, I believe, we just determined that softball's maximum frequency of play limit will be adjusted from 28 dates to now being 56 games. And the answer is yes. We will also sort of merge that now that the association has acted on that and approved that. We'll merge that into this proposal should this pass and adjust the language here to change softball from being noted in terms of dates to instead be noted in terms of games.
Other comments or questions?
Not from our end, Thomas.
Going once, going twice? All right, I assume we're ready to vote on bylaws proposal number 4. So please vote on bylaws proposal number 4.
Fifteen seconds remaining to vote.
And 212 in favor, 10 against, 2 abstaining. Bylaws proposal number 4 passes. We move to bylaws proposal number 5. Bryce and Elfie, please do your thing.
Bryce Bernard, Corbin University. I make a motion to approve Bylaws Amendment 20B05.
Elfie Forshman, Weber International University. I second the motion.
All right. Bylaws proposal number 5 provides a progress rule exception, a one-time, 1-year exception to the progress rule for incoming freshman students who have been charged at least 1 season of competition for non-intercollegiate participation. At the conclusion of 1 year, the student then would be required to satisfy the progress rule and other regulations. But it's a 1-year exception to the progress rule for incoming freshman students who have been charged at least 1 season of competition for non-intercollegiate participation. Questions or comments?
Thomas, I'd like to mention the green highlights on screen. So these are friendly amendments from the sponsors. They're fairly minor and more clarification than anything else, but just to clear this up for everyone. So you'll note that in the second line of the paragraph that has been highlighted, the word academic was struck just because we recognize that it could cause some confusion in what is actually being referenced. And the phrase does go on to essentially define what we mean by 1 year, which is the next 2 semesters or 3-quarter terms. And then in the third and fourth line, that additional phrase highlighted in green, the intention all along by the sponsors was that this exception would apply only to a student's first season of competition, recognizing that the phrasing of year could actually imply something different. So both of those are more clarification in language than anything else and do not change the substance of what we have been talking about at the caucus or at the committee's open forum, which was last Monday, but rather just clarification on the language.
Questions or comments?
We do have a comment from B. Carlton. If you are reading and following along on Zoom, I would invite you to open the chat box to read his thoughts on this comment.
So we'll read it out loud for anyone who may not have access to it. The comment is that this proposal is based on a good idea, but is flawed legislation. It opens the door for significant abuse. In the most likely used scenario, a student athlete who's charged only one season of non-intercollegiate competition after competing for one season on campus, he or she must earn at least 48 hours during that same academic year to be eligible to compete the subsequent year. It seems highly unlikely that even an excellent student would be able to accomplish that. Hence, the student athlete likely becomes a one and done athlete or must sit out during his or her second season on campus. This doesn't support academic success or progress among our NAI student athletes.
We have a raised hand from Drew Watson. All right,
Drew
Drew.
Watson, Southeastern University. I was a member of the Competitive Experience Committee when we discussed this legislation, and have to disagree with my good friend B. Carlton. This was put in place because currently we have international student athletes who are recruited, brought into their institution, are practicing with a team in the preseason. I'm thinking soccer, who then get an eligibility center decision that renders that athlete ineligible after they come to the States and gone through everything. So that the spirit behind this, and it really, I won't get into it, but it represents a compromise from how it was first laid out there a couple of years ago. Allows that student to not waste all the resources and everything that it took to get to this country and start playing, and still holds them academically accountable. And in the eyes of many, it gives them a taste of college, and hopefully they'll stay instead of not having them ever come to college at all. So that was some of the reasoning behind this at the time that the committee put this out.
I would point out, as with other rules, it would be the responsibility of coaches and others recruiting such students to make clear what will happen when they come, so that the student is not surprised. That's true of all other regulations as well, but this might be one that tends to trip up people. Anything else? Anyone else with a comment or a question or a chat insertion?
Yes, we have a comment from Vijay Pomeroy. There was mentioned the ADA meeting, so I'm looking for clarification. If an international student comes in with 3 seasons of non-intercollegiate participation, what is their incentive to make progress instead of being a one and done?
As written, the international student could take advantage of this.
We have a raised hand from Marsha Lashley. Marsha, I am unmuting you.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. And I appreciate everybody's comments and understand their concerns. But this was written because we have many students come in with previous season of competition charged. And again, while it is the coach's responsibility and the institution responsibility to try to inform those students, many times at the time of that they're recruiting, it's not charged or not charged. It's not in the directory of competition. And we're well aware that directory is a living document. It gets added to every year. So it's an incentive to keep those students engaged. And while in the ones we see, the majority we see are charged with 1, maybe 2 seasons of competition. We have very few that are given 3 previous seasons of competition. So at this point, the committee chose is to leave the proposal as written, but it's mainly designed for those students with 1 or 2 previous seasons of competition to give them the opportunity to get them engaged with your institution, both athletically and academically, to help them stay. We found that many are coming, they have to sit out that first year, and many of them leave without even starting school.
Thank you, Marcia. I have Terry Harris with a raised hand.
Hi, Terry Harris, eligibility chair for the Red River Athletic Conference. I realize that what I'm about to say is simply an anecdotal example. However, at my own institution, we had an international student come in who was unexpectedly charged a season of competition. He was going to leave, but we worked with that student. We talked to him, explained options, and he was committed to stay and play. And he earned, I kid you not, 55 hours over 2 semesters plus some additional summer hours so that he could be eligible the next fall. So it is indeed possible if schools will work with students and if the student is committed to an academic as well as an athletic experience. I think it in part is determined by attitude that someone has more than anything else.
We have one question from Don Ott, Commissioner of the CalPAC. Maybe Marcia or Drew, if you can speak to this question in your research to propose this, how many students this possibly could impact annually?
I can only address, we don't have information from every institution. We all use our own institutions as examples. And for my institution, a student body of about 1,400, it impacts between 5 and 7 a year.
So there was one other comment mentioned in the chat related to a preference for a possible friendly amendment, changing the language that would say something along the lines of an entering freshman who has been charged 1 or 2 seasons of competition. So in other words, prohibit students who have previously been charged 3 seasons of competition to come in and utilize this exception that's being proposed. I would make a note that procedurally, and I also want to reference that Corey Westra, who's our parliamentarian, is available here with us as well, electronically, not in person, that for it to be considered a friendly amendment, it would have to be brought forward by the sponsors, which at this point that has not occurred. So we could have an amendment on the floor, which would require someone to make that motion and second it. We would then have to take a vote of the full membership to determine if they would like to see the bylaw proposal amended in the way I just described. Then we would take a vote on the new proposal that we would have in front of us. So at this point, we don't have any motion or anything along those lines to do so, but that's what would be required. And Corey, I'm going to look to you for just a minute, just to make sure I describe that correctly, or please do correct me.
You are correct in your interpretation. That would be the procedure.
We have a raised hand from Ashley Wallachow. Unmuting you, Ashley.
Ashley Wallachow, University of Houston, Victoria, Athletic Director. I just don't see a need to make an amendment at this point. Let's kind of wait and see what happens. If we're so concerned, or if there really isn't a concern, we're going to have freshmen entering with 3 years. I don't see a need to waste any time and trying to amend something that's not a concern.
All right, I don't want to rush through this and block someone from doing something that they want to do by hurrying through it. But if anyone intends to make an amendment or otherwise make an adjustment to this, please let us know your intention, because pretty soon we're going to move to a vote if nothing is heard.
I'll also note there's another comment in the chat stating that someone with 2 seasons charge of non-intercollegiate play who then comes into your institution would play 1 year, and then that would be their 3rd year. To play in their 4th year, they'd need 72 hours to play their last season. So an example of the application of this. Nothing else from our end, Thomas. Oh,
I'm
I
sorry.
take that back.
All right, from Marcus Mueller, Mid-America Christian University, we have, even after doing tons and tons of research, including personal testimonies from league officials and coaches, we have been wrong about whether or not a student athlete will be charged a season of competition. To be clear, we've been incorrect with both direction, charge a student a season of competition when we didn't expect, but also not charge when we expected one to be charged. I just don't think it is simple as do enough research and you'll know. We all understand the implied risk of recruiting internationally and understand we may be wrong, but the proposal would at least provide appropriate wiggle room that I don't personally believe would be abused.
Here, here.
Any other questions or comments?
One more time, unless I hear someone at least expressing an intent to make a motion, we're going to move to a vote. I'll give it about 10 seconds. Hearing nothing myself. Chesney, have you heard anything else?
We have two additional comments, but nothing else in terms of motions, Thomas. So the additional comments are that one says an athlete can get eligible spring semester of second year with 16 hours by going fall, spring, and fall. And the second comment says we have other rules that encourage the one and done aspect of this. So as an educator, I firmly believe that 1 year of school that someone may get out of this is better than not having that year of school. And that is all that we have seen come through, Thomas.
All right. I'm going to rule that it's time for a vote. So please place your votes for, against, or abstain.
Ten seconds remaining to vote. We have a vote of 151 in favor, a vote of 72 against, and 7 abstentions.
This only requires a majority. The proposal passes. We move to bylaws proposal number 6. Bryce and Elfie.
Bryce Bernard, Corbin University. I make a recommendation to approve the motion to approve Bylaws Amendment 20B06.
Elfie Farshman, Weber International University. I second the motion.
This proposal does not basically change the regulations. It simply changes how makes it somewhat simpler for the registrar to verify instances where a student is taking a full load that's not 12, graduate students being the most obvious example. Instead of having to apply specific documentation, this allows the registrar to verify simply by signing the form with those totals on the form. Questions or comments?
Any comments?
Nothing from our end, Thomas.
Haven't heard much discussion in the caucuses and so forth, so I'm going to assume that everybody's pretty clear on this one. Please vote on bylaws proposal number 6.
Ten seconds remaining to vote. We have a vote of 231 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstentions.
Unanimous. Unusual. All right, bylaws proposal number 6 passes. We move to bylaws proposal number 7. Bryce and Elfie.
Bryce Bernard, Corbin University. Make a motion to approve Bylaws Amendment 20B07.
Elfie Forshman, Weber International University. I second the motion.
This deals with repeat courses, a special case in repeat courses in which an individual may have, let's say, passed a course with C. Normally, our rules would not allow a repeat of that course to be counted for the purposes of the 12-hour rule or the 24-hour rule. But in this particular case, if the specific course degree completion or general education requirement in that student's field of study says that a higher grade must be achieved, then one repeat in an attempt to attain a higher grade is permitted. And by the way, you don't have to have gotten the higher grade for the course to count. What you need, but you only have one opportunity. This doesn't allow indefinite repeats. One repeat under the circumstances described in the amendment. Questions or comments?
No questions or comments?
Hearing nothing, please vote on bylaws proposal number 7.
Five seconds remaining to vote.
Fast.
Vote of 223 in favor, 4 against, and 0 abstentions.
Proposal passes. Bylaws amendment number 8. Bryce and Elfie.
Bryce Bernard, Corbin University. I recommend the motion for Bylaws Amendment 20B08.
Elfie Forshman, Weber International University. I second the motion.
All right, bylaws proposal number 8 extends the recertification window. These are courses that are sports that extend from fall into spring. And it increases it from 21 days to 30 days following the close of classes for a term, or 10 days from the end of the interterm. And during this time, any student who was eligible during the term can maintain eligibility and continue to compete without further recertification. I would point out, as was done in the discussion, once a school knows that an individual is ineligible, basically that individual becomes ineligible and to compete, even though the window has not expired. Questions or comments?
No questions or comments?
Seeing no questions or comments, please vote on bylaws proposal number 8.
Ten seconds remaining to vote. A vote of 217 in favor, 13 against, and 2 abstentions.
Bylaws proposal number 8 passes. Finally, bylaws proposal number 9, Bryce and Elfie.
Bryce Bernard, Corbin University. I make a motion to approve Bylaws Amendment 20B09.
Elfie Farshman, Weber International University. I second the motion.
This amendment basically is in line with what amounts to a national trend, I think, permits student athletes to receive compensation from the use of their name, image, or likeness when promoting a commercial product or enterprise, or for a public or media appearance, and to allow individuals to represent student athletes in these proposals or agreement with a professional sports organization. The one curiosity about this is that it basically recognizes the fact that this is a subject in considerable time of flexibility, I suppose. And essentially, the NAI basically must remain in compliance with laws, national or state laws. So this authorizes the Council of Presidents in coordination with the National Coordinating Committee to make adjustments to our rule if that is necessary in due to such things as changes in state or federal law. In other words, what it creates a situation outside that we need to respond to immediately. It gives the Council of Presidents in coordination with the National Coordinating Committee the authorization to make those changes on an emergency basis. Now, the changes would nevertheless be sent to the membership at the next opportunity for a membership vote. But that's a fairly unusual provision, but it does reflect the unsettled nature of this situation nationally. All right, any questions or comments about bylaws proposal number 9?
No questions or comments?
All right, hearing no questions or comments, please vote on bylaws proposal number 9.
Fifteen seconds remaining to vote.
$197 for, 25 against, and the proposal passes. This concludes the business of the convention. All bylaws proposals passed. And so I thank you for your cooperation. Look forward to seeing you, I hope in person, but at least on the internet next April. And I return the meeting to the presiding officer.
We're going to turn this back over to Jim Carr, NAI President and CEO.
All right. Thanks, Chesney, and congratulations to all involved for getting us through our first virtual business meeting. Chesney always accused me of jinxing things, but I think I can safely say we finished that part of it, so I won't jinx it. My role here is to do something I think is a lot of fun, welcome new members into the NAI. Just for point of reference, since we're last together as a full body, we started a new membership cycle where now we have 2 opportunities for new members to come into the NAI. The Council of Presidents votes now on new members in April and at the fall meetings. And so we have 2 classes to tell you about. The first are the members who were voted into membership at the April, because it was actually March 31st COP meeting. And these members are now in the membership. And so we show their conference affiliation as well. So the first is Oakland City University has joined the River States Conference. We welcome them into the NAI. Next is Park University Gilbert, joining the Park University Kansas City or Parkville campus, and they are part of the California Pacific Conference, the CalPAC. Next is Texas A&M University San Antonio, and they have joined the Red River Athletic Conference. Fourth member in the spring was University of North Texas at Dallas, and they are now competing in the Sooner Athletic Conference. And then finally in the spring, West Cliff University out in California also joined the CalPAC. So we welcome in those 5 new members. I say new, they've been officially in the NAI now for about 3 months, but new nonetheless. And then just yesterday, the COP voted to bring in 3 new members in the new fall cycle. These members will become active in July 1 of 2021. You'll notice we've not listed a conference affiliation here. Those, I think they're all looking to join a conference, but those discussions and approvals are in process, so we didn't list any conference affiliation with these. So the first is Iowa Wesleyan University. Joining Iowa Wesleyan is Louisiana College. And then last but certainly not least, St. Mary's of the Woods in Indiana will also be coming in July. So 8 new members just over the last 6 months, a real good sign of people wanting to come our way and be a part of the association. So congratulations to those members. I would just encourage any of you who have connection with any of those schools to reach out, welcome them in, and make sure they feel at home in the NEI. So with that, I will turn it back to Arvid to close the meeting.
Thank you, Jim. And I just want to thank everyone once again for attending and participating in this virtual business meeting. You obviously gave it time and attention, and we moved through things efficiently, and including what might have been possibly the first unanimous vote for a bylaw change. And at least as Mike McCaffrey noted in the chat, go back to your registrars and let them know that the NAIA voted for something to make their lives easier unanimously, and give your registrars a distanced hug, physically distanced hug. Chesney and Thomas, thank you again for shepherding us through this process. Bryce and Alfie, your show was great today. The 79th annual meeting is officially closed. God bless everyone. Bye-bye.